On the night of October 4th, 1582, the people of Spain, Portugal, and the Papal States went to sleep. When they woke up, it was October 15th. 10 days had been deleted from existence, not skipped, not declared holiday, deleted. October 5th through October 14th, 1582, do not exist. Not in the historical record, not in the legal record, not in the ecclesiastical record, not in the memory of the civilization that lived through their removal. Those days were erased by papal decree, and the erasure was so complete that the modern world treats it as a footnote rather than what it actually was. The most audacious act of temporal authority in recorded history, a single institution reaching into the calendar and removing 10 days of human life as if they were a typographical error in a document that the Pope alone had the authority to edit. I need you to sit with the strangeness of that before we continue, because we have been taught to treat this event as a correction, an adjustment, a technical improvement to a calendar that had drifted out of alignment with the astronomical seasons. The story we're given is simple. The Julian calendar, introduced by Julius Caesar in 46 BC, overestimated the length of the solar year by approximately 11 minutes. Over 16 centuries, those 11 minutes accumulated into 10 days. The calendar said it was one date, but the sun said it was another. Easter, which was supposed to be calculated relative to the spring equinox, had drifted. Pope Gregory XIII fixed the problem. He deleted 10 days. He adjusted the leap year rules. The calendar was corrected. Science triumphed over accumulated error. Civilization moved forward. And that narrative is clean, elegant, satisfying. The kind of story that ends the conversation rather than starting one. But the deeper I went, the more I found that the story we're given obscures something far more significant than a technical adjustment to a dating system. It obscures a question that no one asks because the answer has been pre-installed so thoroughly that the question feels unnecessary. Who has the authority to delete time? Not to measure it, not to organize it, to delete it, to reach into the lived experience of an entire civilization and declare that 10 days of human life did not happen. That contracts signed on October 7th, 1582 are invalid because October 7th didn't exist. That babies born during the deleted days have no birthday. That debts due on October 10th are now due on October 15th. That the prayer said, the meals eaten, the love made, the work done, the children conceived during those 10 days occurred in a temporal void that the highest spiritual authority in the Western world declared to be nothing. This raises a simple but critical question, not whether the astronomical correction was necessary, whether the power to make it is something any institution should possess. The silence was deafening when I started looking at the correction itself, not at the politics, at the astronomy, because the astronomical justification, when you examine it closely, raises questions that the official narrative glosses over with remarkable efficiency. The Julian calendar gained 1 day of drift approximately every 128 years. Over 16 centuries, from 46 BC to 1582 AD, the accumulated drift was approximately 12 to 13 days, depending on the starting point of the calculation. But Gregory didn't delete 12 or 13 days. He deleted 10. The official explanation is that the correction was calculated not from the inception of the Julian calendar, but from the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, when the relationship between the calendar date and the spring equinox was formally established for the purpose of calculating Easter. The drift since Nicaea was approximately 10 days, so 10 days were deleted. But this explanation requires you to accept a specific historical premise, that the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD correctly identified the date of the spring equinox, and that the equinox at that time fell on March 21st, which is the date the Gregorian reform used as its anchor point. And the deeper I went into the records of the Council of Nicaea, the more I found that the Council's determination of the equinox date was itself a political decision, not a purely astronomical one. The Council chose March 21st because it aligned with the Easter calculation they wanted to standardize, not because independent astronomical observation confirmed it as the precise date of the equinox in 325 AD. The deeper I went, the more the 10-day correction started to look like a number chosen to produce a specific outcome rather than a number derived from objective measurement. The outcome was a calendar in which Easter could be calculated by a specific formula controlled by the Church. The correction wasn't purely about astronomical accuracy, it was about ecclesiastical authority. The ability to determine when Easter falls is the ability to determine the single most important date in the Christian calendar, and therefore the ability to govern the rhythm of Christian life across the entire world, as if they were following instructions they didn't fully understand. Now look at what the deletion actually did to the people who lived through it, because the official narrative treats the deletion as seamless. A bureaucratic adjustment. Painless. Invisible. The calendar changed and life continued. But the records tell a different story. In Spain and Portugal and the Papal States, where the Gregorian calendar was adopted immediately by papal decree in October 1582, the transition produced confusion, anxiety, and resistance, not because people couldn't count, because the deletion had real consequences: wages, rents, contracts, legal obligations, interest payments, tax deadlines. Every financial arrangement calibrated to specific dates was disrupted. Workers lost 10 days of wages in October 1582. Landlords collected a full month's rent for a month that was 10 days shorter. Creditors demanded payment on dates that had been moved. Debtors argued that obligations due on deleted dates were void. The financial chaos was real, documented, and resolved, in every case, in favor of the institutions that controlled the calendar rather than the individuals who lived inside it. The Church decreed the change, the state enforced it, the people absorbed the cost. The same pattern I've found in every investigation. The institution restructures reality, the population adapts, the cost flows downward, the benefit flows upward. But Spain and Portugal were just the beginning. Because the Gregorian calendar was a Catholic reform, and Protestant Europe refused it, not because the astronomy was wrong. Protestants acknowledged the drift. They acknowledged the need for correction, but they would not accept a correction issued by the Pope. To adopt the Gregorian calendar was to acknowledge papal authority over the measurement of time itself. And for Protestant nations that had spent the better part of a century defining themselves against papal authority, that acknowledgement was unacceptable. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision across the next 3 centuries. Because Protestant Europe didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar quickly, it resisted for generations. And during those generations, something extraordinary happened. Europe operated on 2 calendars simultaneously. Catholic countries used the Gregorian calendar. Protestant countries used the Julian calendar. The date in Paris and the date in London were different. The date in Rome and the date in Berlin were different. Letters crossed borders and changed dates in transit. Diplomatic communications required dual dating. Trade contracts specified which calendar governed their terms. The measurement of time itself became a boundary between civilizations, a marker of identity, a declaration of allegiance. England didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1752, 170 years after Spain. By that point, the drift between the Julian and Gregorian calendars had increased to 11 days. England deleted 11 days, not 10. Different country, different century, different number of deleted days. The people of England went to sleep on September 2nd, 1752, and woke up on September 14th. The response was confusion, anger, and the possibly mythologized but culturally persistent story of mobs shouting, "Give us our 11 days." Russia didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1918, after the revolution, 336 years after Spain. By then, the drift had reached 13 days. The Soviet government deleted 13 days and simultaneously declared that the old calendar, the Julian calendar maintained by the Russian Orthodox Church, was a relic of the old order. The calendar change was explicitly framed as a political act, a break with the past, a declaration that the new regime controlled time itself. Greece didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1923. Turkey in 1926. Each adoption deleted a different number of days because each country had waited a different length of time before capitulating. Each adoption produced the same disruption, the same financial chaos, the same downward flow of costs, the same upward flow of control. The deeper I went into this cascade of deletions, the more the Gregorian reform started to look less like a single astronomical correction and more like a centuries-long campaign to bring the entire world under a single temporal authority. Not the Pope's authority specifically, since Protestant and secular nations eventually adopted the calendar for practical rather than religious reasons, but a single system's authority. A single framework's control over how every human being on Earth measures the passage of time. Here's where the thread connects to something I've investigated elsewhere. Because the Gregorian calendar didn't just correct the Julian calendar's astronomical drift, it replaced a competing system that the Julian calendar had itself replaced. And the system beneath the Julian system was the one that keeps appearing in every investigation I pursue. The lunar calendar. 13 months, 28 days each, synchronized with the moon, with the female body, with biological rhythms that the solar calendar ignores. The Julian calendar had already replaced this system with a 12-month solar framework. The Gregorian reform refined the solar framework's accuracy while maintaining its 12-month structure. Each reform moved the calendar further from the lunar rhythm. Each reform increased the precision of the solar measurement while preserving the disconnection from the biological and astronomical cycles that the lunar calendar had tracked. And here's the question that connects the 10 deleted days to everything else. When Gregory XIII deleted 10 days in 1582, he wasn't just correcting a drift. He was re-anchoring the calendar to a specific astronomical event, the spring equinox, at a specific date, March 21st, for a specific purpose, the calculation of Easter. The correction ensured that the calendar would remain synchronized with the solar year for millennia to come. It was a permanent fix, a lock, a mechanism that would prevent the calendar from drifting again. But the calendar it locked into place was the 12-month calendar. The irregular calendar. The calendar that doesn't match the body. The calendar that runs on months of 28 to 31 days in a pattern that no biological rhythm recognizes. Gregory's correction didn't just fix the calendar's astronomical drift. It permanently cemented the 12-month system as the global standard. It made the irregular calendar so astronomically precise that there would never again be a practical reason to reform it. The window for replacing the 12-month system with something that matched the body, the moon, the natural rhythms that every pre-Roman culture had organized time around, that window was closed by the Gregorian reform, permanently, with a precision that ensures the irregular calendar will remain accurate for over 3,000 years. I'm not telling you the Gregorian reform was a conspiracy against lunar timekeeping. The astronomical correction was real, the drift was real, the need for reform was genuine. But I'm asking why the reform that was chosen was a reform that permanently locked in the 12-month system, rather than a reform that might have returned the calendar to the 13-month framework that was more biologically resonant, more mathematically elegant, and more historically universal. I'm asking why the correction reinforced the existing structure rather than improving it. I'm asking why the most powerful institution in the Western world used its authority to ensure that the calendar that doesn't match the human body would remain the calendar of the entire world for the next 3 millennia. I'm asking what it means that a pope deleted 10 days from the calendar in 1582, and nobody in the modern world finds this strange. That entire nations live through the deletion of days, and the deletion is taught as a footnote rather than as one of the most extraordinary exercises of institutional power in human history. That the authority to delete time itself, to reach into the lived experience of millions of people and declare that 10 days of their lives didn't happen, was claimed by a religious institution and exercised without the consent of the people who lost those days. I'm asking what other time has been deleted that we don't know about, what other adjustments have been made to the calendar that we weren't told about, what other days, months, years have been added, removed, or rearranged by authorities whose power over the measurement of time is so total that we can't even verify the timeline we've been given, because the tools we would use to verify it are the same tools that were produced by the institutions that control it. Go look at a calendar, the one on your wall, the one on your phone, the one that governs every deadline, every birthday, every anniversary, every fiscal quarter of your life, and ask yourself who made it, who decided how many months, who decided how many days in each month, who decided which days to delete and which to keep, who decided that this system, this irregular, biologically disconnected, astronomically over-precise system would govern the temporal experience of every human being on Earth. And ask yourself whether they asked your permission, handed a calendar with 10 days missing, and told it was complete. What else have we been handed and never thought to question?